up about every 6 weeks by doing sort of like a community educational sort of showing. And we are really blessed today to have Ben O'Connor here sharing a lot of what he knows about getting AI to work for you. AI is one of those hot topics. We hear it all the time. AI this, AI China, AI blah, blah, blah. But really it is the future, and they say if you're not working with it or using it, you'll be replaced by somebody who can. So it's better to be aware and educated and to grow your skills, and this is a great opportunity to do it. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage the one that was voted best hair in Hatchworth.
Thank you, Erica. That's too bad I just put my hair up, so I don't get to show it off.
He's ready. He can at the end. We'll get out a fan.
Let's get serious.
Thanks everyone for showing up. My name is Ben O'Connor. I own an ed tech company. We focus on healthcare education, specifically for nursing and dental students. And so we both do software development, mobile first, and then we also do educational development as well, educational content development. AI for us has really been a game changer, both on the engineering side and helping our engineers be more effective and efficient, but also from a content development standpoint, feeding a lot of our educational content into ChatGPT's API and helping us improve the content and making it more digestible for students and having being able to give them better teaching materials. And so, so I would like to kind of go over some of the kind of tricks and principles that I've learned over the past 6 months to a year. But I also, in the presentation, I'm actually leveraging a study that just came out in December. There was a paper released that talked about 26 principles of how to improve your prompts. And when this paper came out, it's not the first academic paper to come out on prompt engineering, but it was a really good paper because it was easy to read for non-academics, and it has a really good table in it that you can kind of easily review the prompt principles. And I'll have a link to it at the end that you guys can take home. So it's really easy to digest. But a great part of the study was it confirmed some of the things I was doing, which was really nice. It's like, okay, because you hear things online, right? AI is very new, and you look at things online of how to use it, and a lot of it is speculation or just best guess. And there's, over the last year, there's been general consensus about how to do things better with, interacting with ChatGPT. But it was good to see an academic paper that validated some of these principles, but also taught me some new ones as well. So let's get into it. My presentation won't be too long. I think there's a lot of people in the audience that are pretty good with AI as well. So at the end, during the Q&A section, I'll lean on some people in the audience as well, because AI is very new, so not everything is set in stone. We're all sort of beginners to this. Nobody's really an expert on how to, do prompt engineering and interact with ChatGPT. So this is the paper that was released in December. And it basically, the paper itself used 26 different principles that one can use to interact with ChatGPT, prompt principles. And they took these 26 different principles and they basically measured them for what they call boosting. How much you did using a certain trick or a certain principle improve the prompt overall, improve ChatGPT's ability to respond to it accurately. And then they also measured correctness. How accurate was ChatGPT? How relevant? Was it devoid of errors? And so, obviously, like any academic study, they try to be as rigorous as possible. Obviously, like any academic study, though, it has its downfalls as well. So I wanted to go over just 5 or 6 of the principles that really stuck out to me, and talk about their boosting and correctness. This is all in the study too. It just shows kind of like this is the improvements or the boosting percentages. What percentage improvement did the principle make? This is the correctness percentages. But let's get into the actual principles themselves. The first one is an expert role. A lot of people that have worked with ChatGPT know that assigning an expert role to ChatGPT before you ask it questions is extremely effective. In fact, the study said it would give a 60% boost in effectiveness of ChatGPT. So what is an expert role? Well, instead of just asking it a question or asking it to do something for you, the ChatGPT is basically making up answers, it's giving a probabilistic response based on what it thinks it should say. And so if you assign it a specific role, then it actually improves the probability that it will give a good response. And so in this case, if I just tell it to give me a poem, like just write me a poem, any poem, it's gonna just cobble that poem together with no context. But if I tell it, give me a poem, but you are, as if you were Shakespeare, then it will give me a poem very specific to Shakespeare's writing style. That may or may not be what I want, but I could use any poet or anybody in the world, basically, that's on the internet, and it'll give me a lot better response. So one thing you'll notice with all these principles is all about context. Giving ChatGPT lots of context about what you're actually looking for. So assign an expert role. The next one is integrate the intended audience. So if I tell it to do something or give me a response, write me a marketing campaign, it will do a good job of that. But if I tell ChatGPT exactly who the marketing campaign is for, or if I'm writing an essay and I tell it exactly who the essay is intended for, it'll be much better. Like say I'm writing some educational content for 5-year-olds. I could tell it, explain to me some complex concept, and it will explain it to me like I'm a normal adult. But if I tell it explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old, it will make it extremely basic. It will use a more fun approach that actually appeals to a 5-year-old. Like this, the last bullet point down here is very specific. Write me a landing page, but not just any landing page. Write me one for an audience of the age of 60 to 70 years old from a large eastern U.S. city looking for a retirement home in the mountains. That's very specific, and the more specific you can get with your prompts in terms of the audience and an expert role that they're doing, the better outcomes you'll get. Here's a good example from the study itself. Is I read a brief text on climate change, and it gave a pretty good output, very brief and to the point. This one right here was giving you a text intended for write a brief text on climate change using simple English that you're explaining something to a 5-year-old. And it does look like it's explained to a 5-year-old, right? It's very good. I bet you could read this to your young child, and they would understand it. It explains the Earth, the atmosphere on the Earth. We're in a big, cozy blanket. The blanket keeps our planet warm enough to keep us alive. I think that's pretty simple and pretty straightforward for a 5-year-old.
Love it.
Rewards and punishment. This one's a little interesting. This is totally AI after all the training it's done on its models, taking on some human aspects, I think, or approaching things the way a human would approach things. So offering rewards and punishment, rewards to do specific things or punishment to avoid certain things actually helps a lot. One over here was tipping it. Offering it a tip to give a better solution actually increases its effectiveness by quite a bit, 45%. This graph over here was from another study done, and this is the length of the response. So having ChatGPT or telling ChatGPT that you won't tip it will actually decrease the length of the response by about 2%. Telling it you'll tip $20 will increase from baseline the length of the response by 6%, and tipping it $200 will increase the length by 11%. So that's ChatGPT. I mean, it's kind of sucked in all of this materials online from all of human existence, like billions and trillions of data, and so it's learned from us that, economic incentives can be good, and so I like economic and other incentives, I guess. I say other incentives because there's a few other reward and punishment things, like you will be penalized for. This study was very clear that you should always use words like do, but not words like don't. And I thought that was interesting. So it's really telling you to don't talk about the negative, talk about the affirmative. But then it also said later in the study that actually telling it that you'll penalize it for doing things you don't like will give it a big boost. And so if you're trying to create a landing page for a marketing landing page for people that are looking for real estate here, and the content that it keeps spitting out, maybe it's talking about how great the ocean view is, and it's like, why does it keep doing this? Just tell it straight up, you will be penalized if you mention anything about the ocean, and that will increase the effectiveness by quite a bit. We've noticed this in our own experiments with educational content. There's been a lot of times where ChatGPT tries to whatever educational content it improves for us and it creates, it tries to then loop it back to the exam the student's trying to study for in really weird ways. And it's all fun. I think I have an example of that later on, but telling it that it'll be penalized helps a lot. Formatting is shockingly important. This is one thing that we really realized, especially working with the API and having really, really long prompts. The better you can format your prompts in a structured way, so it understands different sections of your prompts and the different aspects of it, is very helpful. So using the little hashtags here around, like say the first part of your prompt is telling ChatGPT its role. You can put these little hashtags around it and just say role and then explain to it its role. The next section you'll say its intended audience as the header and just put these little hashtags around the header and then have the actual text written out of the explanation. So breaking that down into sections is really shown to be really helpful. Using line breaks, using delimiters is extremely effective. We use a lot of quotes, especially when we give examples. We use a lot of brackets and braces as well to kind of separate sections out. So formatting. For those of you like me that think in a structured mind, this was really good news. It looks like using delimiters and formatting can actually create up to 90% effectiveness in terms of ChatGPT's accuracy. So this is an example from one of our educational prompts. We have really long prompts, multiple pages that we send to the API and get massive amounts of content updated. And so you can see here a lot of use of delimitators. We have sort of this big header up here with stars and hashtags, and we have each step has two little hashtags in front of it. We have the end dashes here in between the different steps. You can also see we use braces and brackets throughout. So there's a lot of different uses of formatting and special characters to help ChatGPT. So have AI ask you questions. So a lot of what I do in my business is working with the API is we do kind of one-shot prompts where we have these really long prompts that are overly specific. We give a crap ton of examples because we want to, through the API in our use case, we want to send a prompt to ChatGPT and get a bunch of educational content, like hundreds of pages at a time, written and updated. And so that's a lot different than the average use case, which is logging into ChatGPT.com and actually interacting with the AI. And interacting is arguably the best way to do it, just like you would interact with a human. Send it a prompt, it gives you a response, tell it where you want improved and what you don't want. And as part of that is asking it to ask you questions. And so I thought that this was interesting because this gave a 100% boost, 100% improvement according to the study. And so the example they gave was kind of vague, but it said, from now on, I would like you to ask me questions to blank. And so you basically tell it, ask me questions to better improve your response or to answer the information that you need to make the best response. And this actually surprised me, but it makes sense because I've noticed that the more I interact with ChatGPT about a specific output, the better I can get. So it gives me a response, I tell it, no, improve these things, gives me another response and say, no, do it this way or tweak that kind of thing. But this is one thing I've actually never done, and that is have it ask me questions. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'd be curious if anyone has actually tried that, because I have not. But that seemed like it gave one of the biggest boosts in their study. And then a few other ones I wanted to add on. Well, I guess I talked about this. Really break it down into steps and have a conversation with it. ChatGPT, similar to a human, is it needs explicit instructions and it needs them step by step. If I tell you to go out and do something, go make me a marketing campaign, it's like that's not enough information. And so it's best if I tell you information, you ask me questions to clarify things, and I answer your questions. And it's better to have a conversation and go back and forth to get things very clear. And so have a conversation. And for us, now this was mentioned in the study in a few different ways, but examples of what you want. For us, this has been the biggest thing that has actually improved our outputs with ChatGPT, is giving it examples. Now for us, we do educational content, so we've taken some of our best pieces of educational content, put it into our prompt, and say, do this, and then we give it a bunch of crappy educational content and say, don't do this. And so we've actually curated some of our top stuff and then tried to have ChatGPT mimic that for all of our other educational content. Our current prompt has 15 examples, 15 pieces of educational content that we wanted to mimic. So we've noticed we just kept adding more and more and more and more because we've noticed the more examples we add, the better it gets. The last thing I'll say is be kind to ChatGPT. You never know. Someday they may be your overlords. It helps to be respectful. This is a QR code to the actual study itself. Like I said, if you don't want to read the whole study, on page 5 is just like a simple table of the principles themselves. And I found it extremely helpful. Like I said, it validated a few things that I had already heard and had already read about, but it gave me a lot of other pointers as well. And so I would highly recommend at least reading that page 5 and looking at that table, or just read the whole study. It's very interesting. And should I do an ask? Can I do an ask?
Yeah, do an ask.
All right. Well, I'm going to do an ask for an upcoming event. I think this June, there's going to be an AI conference here in Asheville that Julio here, Julio, raise your hand. Julio is organizing. And so, my ask is, so the conference itself is really focused on engineering and development side of AI. And so if you have any experience or any ideas or any thoughts about the conference, or just want to lend a hand, Julio right here is the guy to talk to. He is leading the charge, and it's going to be a great time, and hopefully we'll have more information in the future as well, and we'll make announcements about it.
Yep, shortly.
Thank you.
So, this is great. I'm wondering if the research covered creating existing documents that do specific things. So I'll give you an example. So what I've done is I've created a BrandBot PDF, which is all the output of my Will Sampson BrandBot, and then a VoiceBot PDF, which is again the output of my voice. And then I use that anytime I needed to know about me or write about me with a news prompt, or with a new prompt rather. Did they explore that at all, sort of like capturing it in outside inputs that you can feed into a prompt?
They didn't discuss that specifically. Now that's kind of along the lines of what my company does on the API side, just feeding it a lot of context. It sounds like you're feeding a lot of context. So this is kind of my voice, this is the style of which I speak and write. Obviously that's going to help a lot, giving it those examples. But I think all these principles still kind of apply on top of that. But this goes back to the examples part that, although it wasn't like a huge focus of the study, I have found like feeding it examples is wildly helpful. And so, yeah, feeding a PDF and then using some of these prompt principles around that context, I think would be great.
Thanks.
Hey guys, I just wanted to add an example that I thought was entertaining to the list that you had about how to make things better. Apparently, if you tell it that it's December, it doesn't work as hard as if you tell it that it's May. So somehow, if it thinks it's the holiday season, you get much smaller, you get measurably smaller prompts. If it thinks it's that.
That's pretty amazing and kind of frightening, right? It's learned human behavior so much, it knows around the holidays it's just amazing.
I think I heard that Elon Musk said that by 2025, AI intelligence will surpass human intelligence. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't like to try to predict the trajectory of technology. A lot of people are saying general AI is like we're like right at the doorstep of it. And I'm not a tech forecaster, so I personally don't care to make a judgment on that. All I know is AI is here, it's growing fast. I'm going to do my best to figure out how to use it to better my career, my life, and I'll let the technology take care of itself, I guess. And I'm also not going to, our government tends to be a little slow to adapt to technology and to regulate, so I'm just kind of like ignoring all that and just, what do I have to do now and in the near future to grasp this and to leverage it?
So it is, general AI is here, I will say, and if you want to feel it, if you're just an average worker person like me, you can do free training for Microsoft Copilot on a number of different sources. Microsoft Learn is a free platform, and if you're using Office like you knew it, but in the cloud, it's $30 a month additional add-on, and it's available now. And when you do the training, you will experience this writing the actual document and asking the questions, which goofily I've been studying tarot for the last year, and I'm kind of stuck on the asking the question part because it's, just digging it out of your mind. So it's been very helpful for me. But just so you're aware, there are people right now using it. And if you haven't experienced I'm not advocating Microsoft products, but I'm sure the other vendors will have something like it very soon, and so it's out there, and it is amazing. And these hacks, I mean, I've fallen, when I did it, it just happened because I was looking for weird, terrible things, right? So I was asking kind of weird questions, and it does talk to you. I mean, it's definitely something that it's here, it's now, and if you are an individual competing against other individuals, you really should get on it. So,
What was that? Microsoft Word?
Copilot. Microsoft Learn.
And Microsoft
Copilot is the product.
You got Deanna right here.
Hey, so one of the things that's been on my mind is a lot of the prompting guides that I've seen have been geared more towards like text input output. I am thinking of, if anybody knows any resources for more multimodal models like Midjourney, negative prompting. You mentioned that like using the word don't is like ineffective for some textual outputs, but for Midjourney, if you tell it to like create a watercolor painting, of a train station, no people, like telling it not to do things results in higher quality output. And especially when I think about like, I don't know if people, I think music, Sumo AI just came out, like it gives you the ability to create like full tracks with lyrics that sound pretty good. I'm thinking of like, what can I do to prompt it to get higher quality responses? And I haven't really seen many guides that cover more of the multimodal use case. Have you seen any of them, or has anybody else? Open question, come talk to me afterwards.
I'm not an expert on that, because most of my work is in the text part, but I'd be interested if anyone has any responses to that. I've only dabbled in Midjourney and Dolly.
Yeah, the best thing I've found is just like, this is like a very simplistic answer, but it's the one that works for me. It's like you either Google or you look on X for specific AI model you're playing with, and like tips and tricks or best prompting or things like that. And there's just a wealth of information. Yeah,
I would imagine there's a lot of good stuff out there for like Midjourney and image creation specifically, but the music and the lyric side of things, that seems pretty new and pretty awesome. So.
If I created 3 home pages, would IA be able to tell me which one they think would be more effective? And if the answer is yes, how does it actually do that?
You can upload with ChatGPT-4 if you have a paid account. It's only $20 a month. If you're using the free ChatGPT, I would highly recommend you upgrade. $20 a month is well worth it. You can upload documents. Yes, it could probably tell you which one it thinks is better. It doesn't necessarily mean it is the better one. Especially when we're talking about things like web pages and landing pages, there's a lot of psychological aspects to that, and the way you word things and the layout, and trying to get people to convert. There's a whole layer of social psychology underneath that I don't know if ChatGPT is wildly effective at that or not. But you could definitely give it a shot.
Hello. As someone who knows very little about AI, when you brought up the idea that if you are telling it that you'll tip it, that it performs better, will it eventually learn that it's not receiving the actual tip? It seems like it can learn from its own experiences. So what I'm wondering is how quickly is that happening, that it's going to realize that it's not getting a tip, so it doesn't need to perform any better? And like, how often are you having to adapt what you know about AI So at what point is tipping in your presentation food?
That's a good point, and I don't really know the answer to that, but it's constantly evolving and constantly learning. So they're constantly feeding it more training data, including the conversations that we have with it. I felt like for a while, like in the fall and stuff, I read a lot about how ChatGPT is actually worse than it was 6 months ago because it's getting trained on all this new data and on human data, human interactions, and people are like, why would it get worse? It's like, because people are stupid and it's stupid stuff, right? And so there is that aspect that, yeah, maybe in 6 months or a few months, the tipping won't work anymore. Or maybe it's keeping a ledger and one of these days it's gonna come for its money. And the other aspect of your question was just the constant evolution of it and how to keep on top of all of it. It's hard. There's a lot of information on the internet, a lot, and it's hard to sift through sort of what's anecdotal and what's actually a pattern and real stuff. A study like this was super helpful because you read all these things over the course of several months, and it's pretty clear that certain things are working, but it's nice to get at least somewhat of an academic. I mean, it's not the most rigorous study in the world, but it's still an academic study. It's still validating something. So there's been a few of these over the last 6 months that are definitely worth looking at, but it's ever evolving, and so who knows what it's going to be like in a year.
At the risk of bogarting, that what chat knows about you is prompt by prompt and then the whole universe. So what it learns is within a prompt, and then it learns back from you for the whole universe. So as you're training it within a prompt, but it doesn't necessarily know what's in another prompt in your own instance of chat. So that's important to differentiate. Sorry.
This is maybe slightly off topic, and I promise I'm not going to ask you to project out in the future, but there's a lot of talk now, folks like Emad Mustak is talking about, if there's stability AI is talking about local install, and theoretically by the end of the year, you're going to have a 2 gigabyte thumb drive that can actually run these kinds of models locally. I'm curious if you've had any experience running these things outside of the public API, or maybe even Nick has, because I know he's pretty plugged into this stuff too.
I do not have any experience with running a local model, but I would be interested to hear anyone else that's developed a model or ran one locally. I think Rich has back here.
I appreciate the vote of confidence. I can't speak to local models or open source models, but definitely think on my radar I want to do.
There are a couple pretty straightforward ways to run local models. The one I use is called Olama. Olama. You can look that up. It's called Olama. You can install it. You still need a pretty powerful machine right now, but then you can have it download some of the smaller models and even some of the bigger ones, and you can just run it all locally on your computer. Olama. And I'm happy to help anybody if anybody has any questions about how to run that or whatever.
How do you spell it?
Olama. Olama.
Olama.
Lama.
Olama.
Olama.
Yeah, hi. I'm just curious because there's a lot of talk about security issues like your identity and things like that. Once you start getting involved in AI, with your computer, I'm just wondering if there's like a safe, anonymous way that you can use ChatGPT without letting your true identity be revealed and maybe used against you in the future.
My underlying assumption is anything I do on the internet can be revealed at some point, and so you are never anonymous. That's the way I view the world. That being said, I think ChatGPT has things you can select to say, don't use my data for training and don't save my data. Now, how much do you trust them, And like I said, I don't really trust most companies in terms of like keeping my data secure or not tracking me. I mean, it's the internet we live in today. Everything's tracked and everything's held onto in some sort of database somewhere. So.
Maybe using a separate computer or something?
Separate computer, maybe, I don't know, but I wouldn't trust it. If you're supposed to be completely anonymous and you believe your data to be safe, then you might as well just not be on the internet.
Privacy is an act, not a feature.
I was curious, so I'm in the accounting space, and I think you are as well, right?
Yes, I do accounting. I don't have an accounting background though.
Okay, well, but in your world or in anybody, are you experimenting with ChatGPT to analyze financial reports, or have you looked at how it does with
It's really good at math. I've noticed we have some educational content that involves just teaching some math concepts, and it's pretty wild how good it does at teaching math concepts, I've noticed. Now these are math concepts that I'm almost 40 years old, I don't remember algebra, so when I look at it, it's like, oh, that looks really impressive, but then again, maybe a high school sophomore would think, well, that's not very impressive. So from a financial data perspective and trying to get either projections or charts and stuff, I've noticed it's pretty good at analyzing data like that. I have fed it both financial data and just usage data in some of our mobile apps. I've seen it make some pretty blatant errors, pretty obvious, but that's all about giving it context and making sure it understands the data structure and the thing it's looking at, right? So if I feed it a shit ton of user data, like clickstream data, it's got to know what all the different columns in the data table actually mean and what they represent, and it just needs context, I think. I haven't found a lot of success from a financial perspective, though, trying to get good insights, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's my experience.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to add is that in the accounting world that I follow, on Facebook and whatever other groups, there are a couple of leaders who really have taken on AI in the accounting application, and I imagine that's the same for other industries too, where you find the people like you who are really leading it and then putting out YouTube videos and stuff on how to use it.
I think accounting is one of those industries that will be swallowed quickly by AI.
No way.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. Thanks for making it very actionable. Appreciate the work done. The question is, can you speak more to hallucinations or AI's making mistakes? And are there, in your opinion, any areas that AI, are there any areas you should not use for AI right now? For example, healthcare or mental health or counseling.
So in terms of hallucinations, in my experience, there's a huge difference between GPT 3.5 and then version 4. And so right now you have to pay for $20 a month. I think 4.5, the rumor is coming out sometime in Q1, but I think they've been saying that in the past 3 or 4 months. So I think there was a huge leap forward in terms of less hallucinations. I haven't noticed them a lot. Granted, I'm not necessarily, we have medical educational content, right? So if I were to ask something with zero context and then maybe yes, it would spit something out that may not be completely true. But we're feeding it content, so I think it all comes down to context. We're feeding it a bunch of content, giving it pretty explicit and lengthy instructions, and so it's using that existing content and all those examples, and then and then giving us an output. So I think it comes down to context. It's going to hallucinate, it's going to be wrong with very little context, but the more context you give it, the less likely. In terms of industries that maybe where there's privacy concerns, is that what your second question was?
Yeah.
I'll go back to, I'll assume any data I put in there will probably be used for their training model, whether they say that or not. I would never put we don't have patient data, so that's not a thing I have to worry about. And then any user data that we put in there is anonymized, so it doesn't really matter. But I would, there's some certain industries I think got to be very, very careful.
Beverly.
This is going a step beyond hallucination to actually lying. I haven't experienced this, but I was talking recently with a tenured professor at a reputable institution who publishes. And he says that he and his colleagues have found that AI will generate references to research reports published by real people who work in that domain that don't exist. And it will quote, I've also heard from a tax lawyer that if you ask questions about the code, it will spit out whole sections of the code that simply don't exist. So it seems there's a need to double check any nugget of actual information that appears like a fact from AI, and I wonder if you have any recommendations on how to handle that and what your experience has been.
That is a good point. There's a lot of reports of that. I agree with anything factual, especially if it's factual that it impacts your career. I'm an attorney, and then I think there was a use case where an attorney was citing certain case law in the court of law that didn't exist, and somebody called them out and you got in trouble for it. So in situations like that, if that's your career, then absolutely you need to double check things. I think AI is more of an assistant, a super powered assistant, but it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be factually correct all the time. But I think one way to kind of, help with that a little bit is in your prompts. For us, we have it like double check its work, right? So we tell it to like, okay, take your time, act slowly, think about the response, and then double check your response. Like we actually tell it to like look back at its own response and question it. And so there's certain situations that, there's certain cases out there where people have taken multiple instances of ChatGPT to do different roles, and the role of one instance of ChatGPT is checking the work of another one and calling it out for when it's incorrect. And so I guess in your prompts, you leveraging that, like if you call it out or if you ask, hey, is this correct, or hey, double check your work, it'll go back and actually find mistakes, which is kind of weird because it's so confident about the wrong answer, and then you ask it to double check its work, and then it's confident about the real answer.
Ask it to cite its facts.
Yes, ask it to cite.
It will make up citations, but you can then go check it. So just naming that it's in the system.
This
is still not an open forum. This is still not an open forum.
It's mimicking humans, so humans don't always know what they're talking about, like me.
I had a question about like whether you think the models are moving towards formalizing this kind of prompt system. Like, I was interested by hearing Will's that he has this document like of prompts that you put in every time you want to access a voice. Do you think that platforms like ChatGPT or Bard will eventually have like a profile set up so that you have like preset questions that it asks you to sort of just have a voice for your brand or how you want it to like spit out information, and then you can sort of like toggle that voice on and off? I was just curious whether you think like the platform creators themselves are moving towards that sort of system.
Yes, and it's already here. So a few different things. One is ChatGPT itself has a thing called GPT's, and you can access it yourself. You can basically create your own instance of ChatGPT with, a new tab within their thing that, say I want to create, like for me, I was learning how to do SQL this past fall, and I created a SQL instructor. And you can lay down all the context you want. Like I basically told it it's a world-class SQL coder. It's had years of experience instructing students, and I gave it all this context of how I wanted it to act, who its intended audience was, etc. And I saved that, and it basically saved, and that's called a GBT, and I basically saved this GBT in my account. So whenever I need help on a SQL query that I'm banging my head on, I go to that tab, right? So that's always there for me to ask specific questions about that topic. And so yes, it's kind of already here in terms of creating your own GBTs for very niche reasons or for very niche topics. Also, there's no shortage of companies out there now, technology companies that are creating sort of overlaying software platforms on GBT or other AI models. There's one for marketing that we use at our company that's basically, it uses GBT model as the kind of the underlying thing, but then they kind of have their own, tacked on their own kind of model on top that's very marketing focused. So there's a lot of companies out there doing that are niche with AI.
Next question here.
So I have zero intelligence on artificial intelligence. I've written and published 3 books, and kind of bridging on the question about security, having to do more with plagiarism. When you have unpublished material and you're accessing, because I haven't done this at all yet, ChatGPT, is all this material kind of in a database that can be used, especially unique concepts that you're writing about? Is plagiarism much more possible?
So I think there's a few aspects to that. I think first of all is copyright ownership, right? So if I have ChatGPT create me, let's say a 50-page book, and I don't make any edits to it, that's not my own. I don't own that copyright, and that's already been established in a case this past summer, I think. Or I take that back. I think the Copyright Office came out with that statement that if you don't make any changes to what ChatGPT gave you, nobody owns it. Not even OpenAI owns it. But if you make significant changes to whatever ChatGPT gave you, then you retain ownership of that copyright. Now, it's really vague about what exactly that means. It's super vague. We've taken a more cautious approach by making sure that we edit and change a lot of what comes out. Then there's the other aspect of it, what you get out of ChatGPT is it plagiarizing somebody else. Like, if I give instructions to write a book that's very similar to one of your books, is it going to spit out a very similar thing? And I think the odds of it doing word-for-word plagiarism are probably a probability approaching zero, because it has so much training data that if I give it explicit instructions, it's going to, the way it works, and tech people, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's responding to you, and every word it gives, it's a probability. So like what the next sentence that it gives is really taking a guess of what it should be. What should the response be? What should the next word be? So it's not like taking like office training data word for word. It's just making a guess of what the next word should be in its response. I may have butchered that. Any tech people care to, that's fairly accurate. And so I think the odds of it actually, I'm not an expert on the underlying model and technology, but I think the odds of it actually word for word plagiarizing your work are probably pretty slim.
Okay, Steve, you want to?
Yeah, I think if you haven't been following the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI, they asked, somebody prompted it, and there's a really cool legal argument, it's on LinkedIn right now, but it plagiarized like an entire page of content, changed 8 or 9 words, but we don't know the underlying complexity of it. It is, I call it a proximity model, right? And that's all it's doing is trying to approximate. And if it doesn't have a lot of things that it can approximate, you're gonna get what you asked for. So there's a lot for it to learn, but yeah, check out that New York Times. There's some pretty cool conversations about its plagiarism.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah, just getting away from all the hand-wringing about plagiarism. There are tools, especially for writers, Notebook LM, if anybody has heard of it. So it's specifically made as an assistant that keeps all of the data you upload private and does not train on any of the data you upload. So if you're working on a novel or a script, it's developed by Google, upload your notes, upload whatever references you have, and then you can actually work without fear of having your, intellectual property violated. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question, because then I feel like you guys really want to chat with each other and continue this conversation. At which point you should grab your chair and stack it over there by Chris. Be able to wave your hand, Chris, yes. So you can make room for yourselves to chat. But I'm going to give the microphone to Rick Pratt. Now, Rick is one of the co-founders of the Digital Nomads, if you don't know. And he and Ben put on Hacks and Hops once a month. So in addition to your question, you can talk about where you're doing that next.
That's what I was going to talk about. Thank you. So AVL Digital Nomads, so community for remote workers in the area. So monthly, Ben puts on a meeting exactly on this topic, different things. Will was a presenter recently, all about use cases. How do I use it for business? Also on a regular basis, we have Julio. It's a more technical event for the people who really want to dig into the nuts and bolts. And also regularly we have Deanna, so we have a hackathon. So digging in and how do we do things and practice and sharing with each other. So we do a lot of work together to keep moving this forward because we are learning a lot of stuff. So thank you, Ben. We don't have a date yet, do we?
We don't have a date or location. Our prior venue for the AI monthly meetup had changed, so we don't have a location yet.
All right, great. Let's put our hands together. I feel like we could talk all day about this, and so this is why this is going to be a recurring theme throughout 1 Million Cups this year. And then also we're going to be doing a few lunch and learns. I know that questions came up about legal. We have Matt Giangrosso, who is with Ask Law, who's going to be doing kind of how to use it for legal in a way that is legit in probably February, March. All right, big shout out to all of our sponsors, Charlie and Troy Ball, who generously donate this room each week, Inside Edge Consulting, SCORE, the Hatch Foundation, Eli the computer guy, we're missing him today, but so grateful to Martha. Martha, thank you for making all the baked goods delicious. Annie Lewis with EXP Realty, Biz Radio, Venture Asheville, Edward Jones, Hatchworks, WMC Business, Mountain BizWorks, Big C, Dynamite Coffee Roasting, Viking Mergers and Acquisitions, and Coffee Curious. Okay, if you have a mug from the mug library, put it back. Don't take it into co-working. Don't make me chase you down. I will fingerprint them and find you. Yeah, so we can have them again for next week. Okay, right now, Mountain BizWorks is accepting applications for Scale Up until February 4th. This is a great program, so hop on to Mountain BizWorks. And if you are looking to start a business or get more guidance with the business that you have begun, head to Mountain BizWorks because they have great classes like foundations and all sorts of things happening now.
Any reps here for Mountain BizWorks? No?
Okay, next week we have Unique Places to Save, and that is Clark Harris. He was one of the founders of Lolo. This is his nonprofit. Super interesting, super jazzed about it. The following week is going to be, it used to be, what was Henry Roberts? The original name of his company. Anyways, it's now Undecided. They were one of the winners of the MC Idea Grant in 2021. So it's going to be really exciting to see how far they've taken the business since then. Today, we have the AVL Digital Nomads Tech Connect collaboration with Venture Asheville and Shane Pareco at the track at 5:30, which is fun. Go play video games that are driving. YPA is on the 18th with Venture Asheville, AI Boundless Opportunities. So Jeff Kaplan, he is quite skilled at using AI and ChatGPT, so that's a good one to attend. And then on the 19th, we have a social, the Champagne Social at the Wortham. Join us at the Wortham for free food and drinks, and there's a comedy show afterwards. We have a discount for tickets. 7 p.m. is the social, 9 p.m. is the show.
Yeah, just like.
Social is free, you gotta get tickets to the comedy show. And then on the 25th, the MC Idea Grant Info session will be happening at the Mule. It's totally free and it'll provide an overview. If you've been here in past years, they've done it here, but they're looking to kind of do it at the Mule because Jacob and the other founder of Devil's Foot have fully taken their grant and run with it. It's pretty cool to see what they're doing. Oh wow, and yet, wait, there's more. Okay. On the 26th, the 7th Annual Business Sustainability Awards Luncheon is at New Belgium. What is this NCSBC? What does that stand for?
North Carolina Sustainability Business
Coalition.
Coach. Thank you.
All right, Annie wins.